Well, hi there. Good afternoon, all. Welcome to today, the fourth edition of our Topic Special webinar. Well, great to see. Already some people have joined. We expect a few more, but I suggest we shall already start with our presentation and meeting today. Well, we've received some very positive feedback on our previous Holland Semiconductors Topic Special. It was end of September and also about business development. Well, a number of people asked us to stick to this topic and see how we can take a deep dive into this matter. Well, as we like to get feedback and of course use it, we will again today talk about business development, but this time in a slightly different way. So let's say less presentations, more discussion. But first of all, please let me introduce myself. I'm Tom van der Dussen. I'm the cluster manager at Holland Semiconductors. That's the semiconductor group within the high-tech NL community. The high-tech NL community is about 230 companies wide, and 90 of them have a focus on semiconductors, hence the cluster Holland Semiconductors. Well, I'm very happy to work for this great community and be part of the team. Together with my colleagues and all of you, we like to play a valuable role to bond our members between each other, but also towards international markets and sister organizations within Europe. That's the Silicon Europe Alliance, which we are part of. Well, in case you'd like to learn more about our community or what I can do for you, well, please feel free to drop me a question or a message via the chat, as I'm here and available for all of you, of course. Well, finally, before we give the floor to our three guests of the day, there are a few practical things I like to share with you. This is a webinar with quite a full agenda and a lot of participants, so we ask to be patient in case you have a question or remark or suggestion. Please mute your microphone and raise your digital hand, which you can do on top of the screen in case you want to place a remark or have a question to share. You can also check who's all present here today by clicking, well, I call it the puppet sign. You can see who's all present and send them a direct message if you want to. And of course, also important, this meeting is being recorded. So please switch off your camera if you don't like to be on the screen, so to say. Well, as you know, today's topic is business development within the high-tech sector. And we will look into this today in an interview style. You can probably see three guys sitting at one desk, one table, which will be interviewed today. Well, personally, when I think about business development, it's about the high investments and lots of your own time and money you put into the development of a great working product or solution. And well, you are convinced this will be the next big thing, of course, otherwise you wouldn't do it. But how do you kickstart the business, and well, which pitfalls might be there and you want to avoid, of course? Well, we cannot cover all possible questions and suggestions in the next 45 minutes, but hey, let's listen to these three experienced businessmen. They all have a proven track record, so I'm sure we will learn at least one or two important things from them. Well, upfront this meeting, we shared three questions with these gentlemen. So we've already requested them to think about these important topics and share their feedback with us today. Right behind me, you can see the three questions we have shared up front. Number one, the differences in approaching a small or medium enterprise prospect versus a large enterprise prospect. Secondly, how and when to decide to involve local agents or distributors. And how to listen to the needs or issues being shared by customers, how to deal with customer objections. I'm sure we will all recognize a few of these things. So I'd say these are quite generic questions which can be faced in any kind of business, if it's a product or a solution or service, so most probably also yours. Well, the three guests of today. First of all, Mr. Tiek. He is the CEO of Bruco Integrated Circuits and Dieco Electronics. Well, Tim brings lots of experience from different markets, so can be called a true entrepreneur. His companies, Dieco and Bruco, are active in many fields, such as RF technology and the design of custom-made solutions. Secondly, his colleague, Mr. Mark Gortemaker, Business Development Manager within Bruco. And last but not least, do we welcome Mr. Pieter de Groot. Pieter is Managing Director and CEO of Tempress. As you might know, Tempress is an engineering and production company active in several fields such as the semiconductors, MEMS, photonics and solar. And of course, Pieter shall also give a brief introduction of his company. Well, welcome gentlemen. I can see you're quite ready to look into these questions and share your thoughts. If I look correctly, Mark, your microphone is switched off, or do you use Mr. Tim, his laptop?
We use the microphone of his laptop.
Okay, I can hear you loud and clear. Welcome, good afternoon. How shall we start, Mark, Tim and Pieter, with a quick introduction round from you guys first?
Yes, let's do a very short round. So,
okay.
Hello everybody, and thank you for joining this session. So let's do a very quick introduction, but not focus too much, I think, on our companies, because we want to stick to the topic of business development. So my name is Tim. I am right here in our office in Borne, one of the 3 offices that Bruco has, and be happy to share a little bit of the experience on business development in both large and small companies. Before I go there, maybe also a short introduction, Mark and Pieter.
Yeah, so Mark Gortemaker, now 3 years working for Bruco as Sales and Business Development Manager. And previous function was at Maser Engineering, where I also worked as a sales manager and had a lot of contacts. And before that, I worked at Holland Semiconductors. So it's really a difference between the big companies, the big accounts versus smaller accounts. So that's what I want to add today.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Pieter. I have also experience in both smaller and larger companies. I've worked a long time in Philips, later on Analytical, based in Almelo, and since 2 years I own and manage a company in Vaassen, Tempress, which is a much smaller company, about 60 people, but also with a similar market characteristic, very international, high-end customers. But from a total different perspective of number of people. So I also have, and I have challenges myself in business development. We are a growing company, but we can grow faster, and I think that's also what I would like to learn and to discuss with Tim and Mike and with you guys at home or at business, to see whether we can learn from each other there.
Yes. Well, that's the whole intent, indeed, to exchange. I think all of us have some experience in several industries, smaller, larger companies. It's a complex business we're all in, and it's also quite complex to develop new customers in semiconductor as an industry. I would want to start with the first question that Tom posed.
Yes.
Simply zooming in on one very concrete topic, just to get started, and I hope that it will trigger some good discussion along the way.
Very well. Do you have some slides to share, Tim, with us, to share your screen, or?
I think, Mark, you can share mine.
Mm-hmm.
So, next to the smaller companies that we're currently working in, I have also worked more than 12 years in automotive with all the large automotive OEMs worldwide. That's when you talk about doing business with large companies, that is really, they don't come much larger than the large automotive OEMs. So I will share a couple of things from my personal experience on doing business development, and particularly with the large companies. But before I go there, let's start with what is business-to-business business development in general. So the way I like to think of it is about building trust and offering value. And if both are good, so you have each other's trust, you believe in each other, and you believe in offering the value, then you get an agreement, and that's basically business development, what it's about. That sounds really simple. And what is in reality always the big challenge, that is the communication. Communication is always the most difficult thing between humans, between companies, and especially when things really get complex, organizations get complex. Your proposition or the need of your customer is complex. That is when you see this needs a lot of time and work. Communication, what it's all about, I think we all know the theory. It's from interaction from human to human being. It's about understanding the needs and the value, and understanding how decisions are being made. And there's a lot to it, and later on we'll zoom a little bit in on a couple of these things, but it's really about the right tone of communication, the timing, the frequency, and once you are in touch with a potential customer, don't use too many, don't use too high frequency that people avoid, but also don't let it loose. And there's a lot of subtleties there. In the end, if you get this all right and you get a good feedback loop, then you can build that trust. And then along the way of running a project or offering something to your customer, you can strengthen this trust further. What many people in our technology world seem to think is that it starts with the product or with the service or something that you offer. And you have the perfect and the ultimate solution to a technical problem, and then it will sell itself. And that's typically not the case. Communication and human interaction comes first in all cases. So to go to the next one, this is very generic, of course.
You have a lot of experience in this. So where is this function based? Is this function, do you see this as a sales kind of function?
No, not only.
General manager type of what? Where do you see this?
It's in the type of business we're in, it's across the board. So it's really, there is one project manager in terms of who starts and initiates the discussion. In this case, it would, for example, be Mark, and depending on the type of customer and the type of things we try to achieve. But it's not a one-man show, for sure. Everybody's involved. Also, in our case, our engineers, me personally, but also, for example, quality management. It's really across the board. And that is even more important when the larger the organization becomes, the more important this will be.
It's more a process than a function.
Yes. But you need someone who basically is the project manager, if you will, of developing new business. And this project manager could be it could be an account manager, it could be a business developer. In this case, for Bruco, it's Mark and his team. We have a small team of business developers here. And I think that is ever more important the larger the organization is you're doing business with.
Yeah.
So you are doing business with a small medium enterprise, and it's really about two people liking each other, working with each other, then the things go more or less naturally. Once we do business with, and we also work with very large multinationals, then it really becomes a big project with a lot of complexity.
Tim, a quick question. I can read understanding of needs, understanding of value, and decision making. Do you have some kind of checklist that you use within the company to to be sure that you've asked all the right questions, so to say?
It's not really one size fits all checklist.
No.
Completely different for each project.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a lot of, we track a lot of actions and individual assignments, if you will. If we want to, let's say, approach a certain team within a certain customer, then it could be that various people in our organization get specific actions, specific things that they need to make sure. And so I would say, yes, you could call that a checklist, but it's tailor-made for each new type of business.
Okay, so a lot of internal communication between the team. Do we think that we have all info? Have we asked enough questions?
Yes, very important one. It's way too often in general that things are being assumed. And I think we know what the assumptions are, what the definition is.
Yeah.
Well, it's the mother of, this is all the more true in business development. It's also very often in the technical world that people tend to think that what we think is our selling point and most important thing, that the customer will also see it like that. Typically to them, very different things are really important, and you need to validate this, you need to understand this.
Yeah.
Maybe to add also that the experience is that first it's in this case my task to get the customer in and also to check whether the customer is really a customer which is interesting for us. So really assess the way how they put their question. Does it make sense, or is it a strange question? Then organize the conf call, to check really what's behind it, they thought about everything, and then really get it further into the organization, but still control it in a way that balancing also the resources which we have to put in, because we have to assess it, and in many cases it's quite complex. So and we need to free up some guys which are always busy. So it's balancing really, and as soon as we know it makes sense to continue, the decision to go or not to go, make it as early as possible in the process.
Yep.
And then I make try to make clear assumptions also to customer, and it means sometimes that you have to make rough estimates, but put the figures on the table, because that is clear for the customer also. When he wants to commit, he has to really think about a few million, or so then it's clear up front, just to put as much as possible information on the table.
Have you defined an ideal customer profile for that? Do you people know when a customer fits your business, and whether you want to work with that customer? Are there criteria set?
Not real criteria, but in our case, these are electronic companies which want an ASIC developed, which do not have the know-how in-house, but have electronic know-how, where we add both the know-how. And so we also work with customers which have semiconductor know-how, but there we are more add-on. So and when you see this, and when they also want to supply, because then if you supply it for several years the product, then it doesn't, then the risk of having not fully, because in our case it's quite difficult to estimate the amount of work up front. If you develop such a customer and you know that you will get also money from production, then a bit of loss on the project is not that critical, because you can balance it more or less.
The idea of an ideal customer profile would be, I have made such a one, and I have to admit I'm not often looking at it, but it's very good also to say no to certain customers. So if based on that one you can say, okay, this is not what we want. In our industry, the people that are looking for low prices, low margins, is not a market I would like to be in. So I tell my salespeople and business development guys, don't go there.
Yeah, it's really important to do some sanity checks. I think that is a good addition to understanding the needs and the value. If we, for example, for a new chip that we want to develop, customers approaching us, when we do a sanity check on what they think would be the budget for something like this, for example, we say, yeah, we can spend 10,000 euros to develop a custom chip. then we can be very politely refuse it. And you have to do such checks up front because it's not only business development is a very time-intense task. And it's not only your own time, but it's the time of your entire organization. You have to spend the time wisely. So whether that would be an ideal customer profile or that you have indeed a checklist with a couple of things you want to check, I think that's important.
So just to be clear, for you, business development is everything where new customers are involved. It's not only finding more business, so to say.
No,
not particular. It doesn't have to be new markets.
No. For me, business development is every customer.
Every customer. So it's also existing customers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be a total different business, but a total different process.
Yeah. For since we deliver services, and we don't have a product that we sell to the open market, it's not like this. So we each time also engage with existing customers for new developments, and that's we continuously. In our case, for example, we have engineers working in teams that are many of our customers. They are in fact managed by the account manager, and when we see new bigger products requested, then I take over the role. So we manage it like this.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you.
So I'd like to zoom in a little bit on the original question about small, medium enterprise versus multinational. I think most of the companies in our ecosystem in the Dutch semiconductor landscape are small, medium enterprise. And if you are doing business from small company to small company, then it can be quite straightforward. And maybe you know as a director of one company, you know the director of another company. And Jantje is talking to Pietje, and the engineers working there, they are talking to each other, and it can all go quite natural, and that is nice. But now the same company wants to do a business with a multinational. And oftentimes you hear people say, we are talking to BMW, or we are talking to Samsung, and everything is great because we will be we will win the next huge business with one of those companies. And in the end, if you look at who they're talking to, they're only talking to a first level purchaser somewhere in that company, and basically that means nothing.
But it's still contacts. People do business with other people, don't you think?
Yes. So the first contact is established, and that is nice and good. But it's maybe you are at 2% or 5% of where you want to be. You know, because you are talking to somebody, you don't know exactly how they fit in into the entire org chart of that very complex company. You don't know the decision power. You don't know how exactly all these processes and budgets are being managed in that company. So the whole puzzle just starts by talking to this big multinational company, and there's a lot of work to be done, and that is often underestimated. And all the work to be done, I would like to zoom in on one of the tools. Maybe you go to the next one. So what you hear sometimes is some guy saying, "Okay, we are in. We have talked to this large company. Let's say Samsung in this case, and very positive feedback. They really like our products and our technology, and we are successful. We are there."
Okay.
And then internally, this is just, of course, pure anecdotal, but this first level purchaser at Samsung is also enthusiastic. He talked to this company in the Netherlands, and his boss says, "Yeah, that's all nice, but we have very different targets. Our target is 5% cost down on the bill of material, and I've never heard our quality manager talk about this, and never heard a question from engineering. So please stop wasting your time. So you get very different perceptions on both ends. How can you manage such things? So if you go to the next one. I think some of you probably heard about the decision-making units. Personally, I think it's a really good tool to map it. What is DMU all about? This is about understanding large organizations and making it more structured approach to understanding them. So you're talking to somebody in this large company. By asking the right questions to your counterpart and by doing a lot of research and involving colleagues, talking to other counterparts, you can really start mapping this organization. And it's a lot of hard work, but it is typically necessary.
Okay.
So the way a DMU works is that you try to understand for each of the people in the organization, what do they think about you, your products, what are their personal targets, what are their intercompany, could be political reasons, personal targets, all kinds of motivations, and really start mapping that and try to make everybody in that organization enthusiastic about what you have to offer, what you want to offer.
Quick question, Tim. This is for the decision-making unit of a small and medium enterprise, or are we looking at a real, true large enterprise contact?
You can do this for anything, but for really smaller organizations that are closer to you, that you can actually visit, and that maybe only consist of tens of people, and more naturally. The larger the organization, the less natural it goes. If we go to the next slide, this is an example of DMU mapping. So let's say you're talking to this company, Samsung or BMW or whoever it is. You are working not only with engineering, you have purchasing, you have the quality responsible people, you have all kinds of people in management. And for each of those departments, maybe there are 10 stakeholders and many different levels in the organization. What helps typically is if you start mapping it on at least two different axes. This is a simplified example, where on one axis you put all the people you know in organized by whether they are allies or enemies. Enemy means that they don't want you or your products for whatever reason. Maybe because of a not invented here syndrome, maybe because they like your competitor much better, they already have an existing relationship. The allies are the guys that actually believe in you or the product you have. And then within that organization, you also have different influence levels. So you have people with a lot of influence on the final decision, and they are an enemy. So they are basically blocking your proposition. So you need to see how you map this. Maybe you can influence those people. Maybe you can find other people who have even more influence. And this is like a big puzzle, because once you start making it, you don't know all the different people, and you don't know exactly what they think of you. So you need to start somewhere and then work from there, mapping it and continue mapping it. But you cannot do this by yourself. You also need your colleagues. Maybe there's a guy in the DMU that is very high in the organization, somewhere in a high management level, and you need to influence that person, or you need to at least understand that person and involve them. And maybe you need some external help from somebody outside, help you to map the DMU in the top end. Maybe you know that engineering is very enthusiastic, but the quality departments, they don't want new technology, they are blocking your stuff. So you need to have somebody as a counterpart in quality, work with those guys and try to convince them on their needs. And those needs may be very, very different from what you think you have to offer, or what the technical arguments may be.
You mean that your customer with all kinds of different people might have different agendas?
Yeah,
They will.
I think one of the conclusions here, one of the obvious points is that your product, as you talk typically about your product, is only a very small aspect of the consideration of all those people that deal with you. So I think that's a very important conclusion, that some of these people will never work or never see your product, but they have an opinion about you. I think you have to take that into account. And also to find this DMU, I think you were saying external help, if you can find internally somebody that can help you mapping this, finding the ultimate ally, a champion in the organization that you're trying to target, that likes you and that wants to work with you and has the trust to find out where the different people are with the different agendas they have, will be very helpful in further speeding up the process and influencing the outcome of the process.
It's almost a necessity indeed to have somebody at this large customer to help you, but it can even be by asking the right open questions. If I talk to, let's say, a first level purchaser who has no real influence, but we like each other as a person, I can ask open questions. How are these kinds of decisions typically made? Who will be involved in this round? Who will be? What is important for your department? All kinds of open questions that help you get more and more pieces of this puzzle. It is a big puzzle, and it is almost always underestimated how important it is.
Yeah, you have to realize that if you really have enemies on critical places, you will never win. It will always be blocked somewhere.
Yeah. If you have somebody in this particular chart in the upper left, that is maybe all the guys in engineering really like your product and it's cool technology and they really would like to have it. And there's this production manager who says, well, over my dead body, I would never want this because it's only a lot of risk. And as long as this person is out there and you don't know him, and you haven't met him, you can spend a huge amount of time only to lose the business in the end.
He can influence the whole organization. He can block your new product or solution while you don't even know him.
Yeah. So you have to.
He will not be the guy that says yes. So he will not be the guy that says yes, but there's a lot of people that can say no to you without you even knowing it. And I think that's a very important conclusion of such a mapping, that there is those people. It can be legal, it can be financial, they can all say no. And often salespeople think they talk to higher level people that can say yes, but typically they can only say no. They will never. The yes, that's typically coming from one or two persons that have the ultimate yes, but the no can come from many people.
And what's also important to realize is that the high influence, it doesn't mean somebody high in the hierarchy necessarily. It could be that you have, let's say, the CEO of a company is actually quite low influence because he doesn't really care too much. And there is, a software engineer who really doesn't want to do anything that's not invented in-house, who's blocking all this stuff. And he has he has a big voice in this company. So high and low influence, it doesn't mean necessarily the hierarchy within the company.
No.
And maybe I think I have one nice example I'd like to share to basically illustrate this topic. Maybe that's on the next one. Yeah, I want to give one example from within automotive, because in automotive, what we did at some point, we were making sensors, and we were selling sensors in very high quantities, like more than 100 million pieces per year. And before you have a design in, let's say at BMW for all their models of new types of sensors, there are many people involved in the decision before you are finally on board. And we were doing very well at some point at one of these customers. And we had a technical superior solution that was confirmed by everybody in engineering. They have done a lot of testing with our products. Everybody was super enthusiastic. The quality guys, they were also quite positive. We've done this whole DMU mapping. We had a lot of allies after a lot of work. So maybe 1 year of preparation, and we thought everybody wants to have us on board, and we are going to win this huge business. I think this was 50 million revenue per year or so. It's quite substantial. And we had one guy in purchasing just blocking things. We didn't understand. And at some point, this guy in purchasing, we had the opportunity to talk to him one-on-one, just at the coffee machine. You see here 2 different pricing tables. So this is basically the pricing of a product over the years in the different quantities. And we had the very sharp offer, we thought, which was the first pricing table. So lower volume first year starting at $15, and then high volume going to $13. And he just wouldn't accept. And we tried all kinds of different things.
The top table is your initial offer. So you started at $15.19.
That was the initial offer, or maybe after a couple of rounds, of course, but just couldn't be accepted. Then we talked to this guy off the record, and he said, yeah, I have one personal target, and my personal target is what is called productivity. And productivity means the price improvement year over year. So if you are in a certain amount of years you are in production, you get every year. This was his personal target, and his bonus was tied to this. And well, yeah, the easy way for us to solve that is just to increase the prices of the first years. Yeah, he said that's fine. So okay, then we give. That's fine with me. So
of course,
we convinced a purchaser in the end by increasing the pricing. It's of course a very bad thing for his company, yeah? So very situation. But we increased the first year pricing, so it could go down with a percentual rate higher than what it was before. And so it turns out that because this guy could now get his personal bonus, he was no longer blocking things, and we won the business with higher pricing.
Okay, which was very good for you, of course.
It's crazy in a way, but it illustrates that what you think, you're talking to a purchaser, probably he wants lower pricing. It's not always the case. You really understand what's on their mind.
Yeah, KPIs have a lot of influence on the business. I think that's very clear.
Okay, well, is there any final remark one of you guys would like to make? I'm looking at the time.
For me, this is fine.
Any large, big difference between approaching small, medium versus large enterprise? I think the conclusion can be, well, be clear, you know the whole DMU, map the DMU, and keep asking. And then you speak to the guy at the coffee machine, most probably, and you hear the true reason on which you will decide.
Yes, and set your whole organization to work, like what Mark said, it has to be one person guiding the process, typically, but in the end, if you work with this multinational, you need to work on all fronts. The quality guys, the engineering, the production guys, everybody.
Okay, yeah. Well, I can see one question coming in from Mr. Huub Wispels. He's asking, the total quantities, is this about 500,000 pieces or is it 500 pieces?
It was in thousands of pieces, yes.
Ah, thousands of. So 500,000, 1 million, 1.5 million.
It was quite a big deal. This
Yeah.
business. And it's anonymized because the OEM that was involved will not share here, but it's really crazy to think of that we had one guy blocking the whole decision process for such a funny reason, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Well, thanks. Shall we look into the second question? How and when to decide to involve a local agent or a distributor? So my idea is, well, if you involve a local agent or a distributor, well, you give away a part of your margin. He might influence the whole process. He might be selling a second or third brand of goods, so not just only yours. What's your opinion on how to involve them, or why not?
I think just the example that Tim just gave, I think is very illustrative of how important it is to have people on the floor close to where the company is to understand the dynamics of that. And typically, that's something you can do through agents or distributors. More through agents, I think, than through distributors, because distributors have the characteristics of being more on their own. They resell your product, where agents help you selling your products or your solution. So I think it's very important that you have local people. If it's in German to German car makers, you need German people that speak German at the coffee machine to understand what's really going on. It's very hard to do that as a Dutch guy, and it's even getting worse if you're in China, Korea, Japan, or any of those countries. And even in the United States, I think we can understand those people, but culture is different, and to have people that are close to those customers is vitally for these kind of processes. So.
Yeah, I fully agree, and it's also my experience not only at Philips that there was a more logical, but if I look at Mesa, where I worked as an SME around 50 FTE, we had agents in all the countries, and they get bonus of the what they sell. But in fact, they are the gateway to your customer. They understand the habits, they have the relationship. They also organize things locally, so that you can focus on really the high level stuff. And it's just you just have to accept that that's the way it is. And you have to be very transparent also to them, and to give them a good tool set of what they have to sell, and that they know exactly what your targets are for your company. Because if we also learned that if you don't do that properly, then you get things mixing up. And so
I have a crazy example of that working with a Korean big supplier. That indeed, that where there was a local team negotiating with the customer locally, also on pricing, and then suddenly we were called to the main quarter, to the headquarters in Europe, and we were called there, as I was at that time product manager, to sell that product to them, because that internal politics was that supplier, that customer was only buying from the factory, so to say. So they want to purchase it in Europe. We did another round of negotiation, and we gave them the lowest price, and then it turned out that at the same time also the discussion in Korea went on and went on. And then they found out that in Korea they got a lower price than in Europe. And I was literally called to the headquarters in Germany to explain, and I was given a sort of words, so to say, they were very angry, and at the end we had to give another discount, but it says something about the cooperation between the two teams should be flawless, otherwise you screw up and you might lose the customer.
Yeah, and also the communication, but also the policies.
Yeah.
So at Mesa it was quite clear that we had a policy to have. Anyway, maybe we also have other companies that could give the service, but at any time the price level was exactly the same everywhere.
And that's very hard to maintain.
I know.
Given competence.
Yeah. But it can go down.
Law is
Yeah, it can go down, but it should be. You should be aware as headquarters how it is going. Yeah.
Well, Peter, you just mentioned the local to local aspect. That's one of the main reasons to involve an agent or distributor that really speaks the language natively, of course, and knows what's going on.
Yeah, the network that these customers have. So typically you get an agent in for their network.
Okay.
So they can bring you in contact with local people that you will never have contact to directly.
Yes.
Local habits, of course, the local aspect, and typically also the support part. Once you have delivered your solution and it needs support, and having somebody on the floor close by is for some customers very critical. In particular, we are doing large machining in 24 hours operation semi-fabs, and people want to have local people on the floor.
Okay.
So they care that you train your people there, and that can be that do not have to be your own employees. They might work for the agent or the distributor, but you have to make sure that they are well trained so they can give the support to make sure that if this customer wants to expand again, you'll be part of the game.
Yeah, and especially then in the last 2 years, with all the Corona situation, traveling is very hard, of course. Flying over to Asia to service a machine or to present your products to a local customer, well, it's hardly possible.
No, I've now worked for 2 years in Tempress. I haven't seen my Chinese team yet, so except for Teams. And we have a very healthy business there, and I think without the team locally, it would not have happened.
Yeah, but you are convinced they are there.
Yeah.
Well, we just received a question from Miss Johanna Bendina. I'll read it just out loud. What are your best ways on how to overcome enemy in the company that you target? How to win him or her over? I think this goes back to the previous question in the approach of a prospect. When you're looking at the decision-making unit, how to win an enemy, how to turn them over into a friend.
Yeah, it starts, of course, by understanding the needs. Like we already concluded, it could be that all these different people in the DMU have very different needs and different views. And of course, you should always try to understand what is driving somebody, and what either personal opinions or personal targets or whatever. If you are not the right person to find out, maybe because you cannot be, maybe you cannot get along with everybody in that company. Maybe they don't like you for a personal reason. It could be.
Okay.
Then you have to involve somebody else who will figure it out. Worst case, you can always see if you know somebody higher in the organization who can basically overrule it, but it would be a last resort measure, I would say.
Okay.
It is even possible that you have this person blocking things, and it will actually block the business from being developed.
Yes.
We have examples of that too, and then only with the reorganization in that company you can give it another try.
But it will always help if you understand why, the why behind the enemy side. An enemy is not, it's not because the person wants to be an enemy, he is an enemy, he has a reason to be an enemy.
Yeah.
And it can be because of you treated him badly last time, or it doesn't fit his bonus scheme. You offer him, sometimes it's offering a solution that will make sure he loses his job. Then you have to be very careful to whom you talk, and how you structure such a conversation with not only with that person, but only maybe to his boss.
Yeah.
I've had a very recent example where we had an accident where, of course, if you start to go to that people that were involved in the accident of that using our machine, and the customer itself did some things to the machine, and they caused the accident, that you can talk to these guys about, yeah, well, we can prevent that by sending, you can hire our services to send a service engineer to revalidate what you're doing. These guys will never do so because they have to admit to their boss that they did something wrong. They will not do that. So you always have to find out why somebody is blocking you. And sometimes you have to also realize you will never be able to overcome. And then you have to run away. And don't spend any time.
Except sometimes it's good to accept the situation is as is, and maybe there will be another customer, or there will be another customer where you have a better chance, and that will where you win the business.
And you might hope that the competition that is jumping in or will get the deal will at the end screw up for you, and then you will have an enemy less.
Yeah.
So it's very important to learn why does somebody have enemy feelings? What's behind it?
Typically, I think salespeople are always if they get some resistance from somebody, they will tell harder and more louder how good their product is. And it's typically these kind of things are not about your product or your offering in terms of the quality of your solution. It typically has something to do with something else that's not helping. Yeah.
If you stuck to your sales pitch and you talk louder, that will only work in the opposite direction. So.
Okay, clear. Thank you. Anything else to why to add a local agent or when not to add a local agent distributor?
So it's always with local agents, it's for me always a bit mixed feelings because, like Pieter explained and Mark, it's a necessity sometimes for regional reasons. It's also sometimes necessary if you want to explore a new market and you don't know this market, then you have no established connections within, I don't know, you want to go into medical and you don't have any business in medical yet, for example. On the other hand, there are also many poor agents. So finding the right one is a big challenge. It's basically the same as finding the right people in your business development organization. It's not easy. You have people who can really be very good in a certain market and very bad in your particular market. So it is even finding the business development, if you will, of the agents. That is a daily task that can be very intense already. And you may need a couple of tries before you have the right people.
I think if we talk about agent or channel partner selection, I think we probably can spend a whole webinar on that. It's very critical that you indeed select the right people, and also with regards to what you want to achieve and what kind of position you have in the market, and also how important you are for such a agent. If it's a one guy and you are 50% of his business or maybe 100%, that might sometimes be very helpful. Sometimes you want to connect to a larger organization that has the context, but you might not have the depth. And I think that's very depending on the situation, country by country, but also product by product and even market by market. So
yeah.
And if it doesn't feel right, then choose another one. You know, you shouldn't spend too much time with each other.
Okay. So there are many reasons why to add a local agent, or also why not. Then search for the next one when it feels better.
Yeah. And one of the other, also the combination between people that you have in your own organization, the channel management, or in Tempress case, we have, for instance, 4 account managers that have also technical knowledge a lot to support these people in their in making. So we make quotations from a central point, and thereby we support our channel partners in that. Sometimes you have channel partners that would be able to do it themselves, but typically in very complex situations, you can do that centrally. And by that, you can also leverage the technical knowledge you have centrally to a local party and make sure that that's being addressed. Also in times of Corona, where you can't travel to people, it's then even better to have somebody on the table that can speak some of the language, and then helping you to explain the technical solution.
Yeah. Okay. There's one remark coming in from Mr. Huub Wispels. You mentioned a 7 times W question. Am I correct? W means like why or when? Okay. I can see you nod. It's a yes. I understand. Thank you.
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Huub. Thanks. Well, moving to the third question, also looking at time. I think the third question has already been answered at least a little bit. The third question is listening to the needs or issues being shared by customers, how to deal with customer objections. Well, at least partially we already spoke about it in knowing the decision-making unit from your customer and finding allies or encountering enemies on a customer level. But do you have any, well, how do you say, something to add? Listening to issues by customers, for instance. Do you respond to them directly, or when a customer issues any mistakes, for instance? Is it something to take back to the office first, look into the reason why something went wrong, and then go back to the customer so that you have a bigger answer from the whole company instead of responding immediately?
Yeah, but I think this also is about understanding. We talked about a bit, I think, and I think you've just said the 7W questions. I think it's so important in talking to customers that you do not only push your product or your solution, but that you really take the time to start listening. And I have a recent example where we were talking 2 years to a customer, pushing our solution, and then we had at some point, because we started doing these account reviews and we start to do the mapping that we just discussed, we found out that actually we don't have access to the real management layer that would take the decision. And we took some actions. We were able to get this guy on a call. This was all happening in Corona time, so this was all electronic Teams meetings and stuff like that. And we were pushing our solution, and then this guy gave one of his objections, because our tools are huge and the automation, typically if you use horizontal furnaces, the automation involved is significant and expensive and complicated also to work. It has a lot of failure modes. So then the guy said, but can't you offer us a vertical furnace? And we were just developing that one, and this guy just asked for it. And we were talking to this customer for 2 years. We did not even hear that requirement would be there, because we didn't talk to the right person, and we did not let that customer really explain what his problem was. We were just pushing a solution.
Okay, so sending out more than listening to the people. Yeah,
and sometimes also it's because a purchaser is sent with an assignment. You go buy a furnace, and then he goes to a supplier, and we start talking to them. But you should really why do you need such a thing, and actually what is your problem you want to solve, and then go further and further, and only then I think that's real business development. Then you can develop that trust, and at the end you can find a solution that maybe even requires a different business model. And that's typically what salespeople feel a bit uncomfortable with, because salespeople typically want to push a product that they have in their portfolio, and that's the easy solution, because they can book the order and they can cash it. They can get their commission, and the production can get going in delivering it. But there's much more challenge in finding that real solution that maybe involves a bit of service or other things than just a product.
Yeah, maybe if I can share, I know the time is a bit critical, I think, but I just
Okay. Well, please.
Okay, just to share some elements. So a new customer lead, like mentioned already, not every customer should be your new customer, and does the lead fit your company's capabilities and strategy? And let us say no when it doesn't feel right. I have had several experiences when we said yes, let's do it. You have a bad feeling, but we do it anyway. We get a customer in, and then in the end, it's much more of collateral damage because the feeling was already, it didn't fit, but you just continue. And sometimes you don't have a choice. Let's be honest on that. Sometimes you have to take the business. And the collateral damage we have also seen in the past. It's just like customer satisfaction. We measure it also, get the feedback from our customers officially, because you also have a lot of things that people do not tend to say it directly to you, but in a form, it's less painful maybe. So people or the team is putting that feedback, so then it helps you to get real issues down. But also employee satisfaction and stress, because if you get not fitting products in, it will give a lot of irritation, frustration.
Okay, Mark, you mean also look at your internal organization?
That's really what I sense also in my past is really important. I had my own experience in the past that I got a project which was not fitting at all in the company, in the target, everything. So, and then you get stressed by yourself. In the organization, you cannot deal with it. It has financial issues. So, and the customer is in the end also not satisfied because you cannot give the right result.
Yeah.
So, and I think in all business development is taking care of everything around customers. Like you should sense how your engineers are doing, product development. Everything should fit in the right way, and that's not always possible. But when you target to that, it really makes things running more smoothly. It's like the oil in the machine. So, and by itself, like sales is not selling. In fact, at least in Bruco, our engineers with the results make the sales effect. So, and tell a lot of nice stuff.
It's just relationship management.
It's really relationship management, and I fully understand when you are. That's different from selling pencils. So then it's really about fast stuff. But when you are in semiconductors, it's really about relationship, and this should always be the focus of business.
It also depends on of course the business you are in. If you sell like really design solutions, it's brings other issues compared to product selling. Mr. Huub Wispels just mentioned send a free pilot of a product. As soon as the customer is using your product, is testing it, there's a bigger chance he will keep it because he has seen it, he has tested it. But if you design solutions in the IC or RF world, it's of course a little bit tough to send them a sample.
In especially in our community now, it's about what we do now more is selecting the right opportunity to go to invest in. That means that we invest time in it to have a few hundred hours, for example. But you really select this opportunity, and that's our responsibility for business development to say, yes, please, we want to put time in that or not. When you think, this is really not feeling well, then you say no, you do not put any engineering effort, you more, and the higher the chances that you will get the business, the more effort you will invest in it.
We've turned it around as well. We as Tempress were very large in solar equipment, production of solar panels. We make the furnaces for that, or we made. We still could, but the market has completely Chinese.
Okay.
And we still have customers that come to us and want to start an engineering project on solar, and they want to have all the data with us. Previously, we would spend hundreds of hours in providing those data to customers, potential customers. Now we tell the customer, potential customers, we say, okay, we can give that to you. If you are really interested, then you pay us an engineering fee. You pay us 250 euros an hour, and we will put all this stuff for you together. And then if you get the order, if you pay, then we will make a deal about it. Typically, we see that customers then run away. So that's also a way to say
nice selection criteria.
Guys, if you're really interested to work with us, you probably want to have we have to invest both in such a thing, and that is helpful in also checking whether the customer is serious about you.
You ask them to put some skin in the game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't just give it away.
So free pilots, you've never been in Fasten, I guess, but our systems are like 7 meters by 4 by 3, so that's not what you send around as a free pilot. Yeah.
It's not a coffee cup.
I see a lot of experience centers nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that we do with customers. We have some customers that really have our latest and greatest stuff. And I think customers is the best. Happy customers is the best reference you can have. And if you have installations with customers that are happy, then it's best bring customers there or have them telling about it. And I think that's the best way of convincing. Yeah.
Yeah. So references, a customer reference.
Yeah.
Let them tell what you did or what's good about your product.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Looking at the time, is there somebody in the public with a specific question or suggestion? Anything to add? No, not yet. Okay. We've had some questions via the chat, and I think those are all answered or shared. Tim and Mark, Pieter, anything else what you would like to mention, perhaps, well, our biggest success or something which went wrong sometime? Can also be a negative one.
There are so many different topics related to business development in general. You could go ways. It would be helpful from the audience to have some feedback on, for example, which topics you would like to zoom in on next time.
Sure. We're always open.
Important because it's a very broad subject, and if you want to do it right, you need to do all these different nuances and subtleties. You have to do it all right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy art, especially not in the type of business we are in.
No.
I think another topic we were already elaborating to it, but the typically market development, stepping in business development as you just defined as being with customers, any customer. We already would define it as going to new customers and account managers for existing customers. And then, of course, you have the market new business development, which is completely new markets where you need to penetrate and you maybe have to develop new products for or new solutions for. I think that's even a larger challenge to do that. And how do you do that with customers? There's nice theories about that, but personally, in our company we are struggling to get customer input from a business development perspective into your innovation process, and to make sure that you do the right things at the right moment to be able to go to those customers with solutions that are maybe not completely ready, but have some mature state before you start offering them.
Okay.
Sorry.
Pieter, you mean like a round table with some of your customers or prospects to learn from them what they think of your product?
Yeah. If you want to explore new markets and you need to develop new products, then it's always a chicken and egg, of course, and you always have to. It's almost inevitable to act like you already have something new, to probe it and to check whether it resonates. In the iterative process in new market, that is quite a complex topic by itself.
But then you get the order and you have to deliver in 9 months, and
yes,
it becomes very complicated.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of it, so I know.
You have to allocate some budget,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
then it can fly.
No, it's
Yes.
completely. I mean, I've been working in company. I was working in Philips before, where I mean, you have a very well staged process of product introduction, and you would never talk to salespeople outside your product creation team until you have a fully launchable product. And I'm now in a company where that's completely the other way around. Every idea could be a product, and so brings a different challenge. And I think there's an optimal somewhere halfway. And it would be very interesting also to share that with people on the other side, so to say. Not only with customers, but also with partner, with people that are participating here. Yeah.
No. Okay. Well, okay. Thank you, Peter. And indeed, what you just mentioned, getting the purchase order from your customer is of course great, but then still another world starts. The production, getting the product in time, meeting the customer expectations, and keep them inside. Yeah.
Well, what is related, I think, is I always really like transparency. So if you have with your customers, once you establish this relationship, for example, for a new product, you always run into issues and you always have challenges along the way together.
Mm-hmm.
What is really important is to not put just a blindfold on and keep going, but once you start running into issues, to openly discuss it and solve it together. And that is something we are now doing very much also at Bruco. That's complex technical projects, you always run into issues. You always, it will never go exactly smooth the way you thought it out in theory.
So service.
And attacking problems together and solving them together, that is really important along the way.
Yeah. Very clear. Yes, it's not just selling the product. Stick to your customer, deliver service. Ask them for feedback and solve any issue along the way.
And what is very important for business development, but also for sales, is that don't throw it over the fence. And that is a typical sales manager's habit. I've got a deal and then I'm gone. So take your responsibility, and also in the later phase, if there is an issue, take your responsibility. And then also engineering teams feel that you do it together, rather than that they have to clean up all the mess.
Clear.
Yeah. It's not just get the purchase order, but keep on board with your customer. Not pushing the sales. Well, okay, and I can see a remark from Huub. Approach a sales phase as a project with milestones. Yeah, well, that's like it. Step by step.
Yes.
Keep your customer on board. Keep asking for feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything, Peter, Mark, or Tim, some final remark you'd like to place? We're running a little bit out of time, but no issue.
No final comment, just a request to the audience. If you have particular subjects to dive into next time, please let us know so it can be prepared accordingly.
Exactly. Of course, always. Feedback is always welcome. New questions also.
Yeah, we would like to have some feedback on the format.
Sure, we will ask. Yeah, noted. We will send out a question to the audience, what they think of this format. It's new to us. Usually people present, and now with 3 people, like a round table, it's something new, but okay. Do we like it? That's the question. Thank you. Mark, would you like to add something?
No.
Nope.
It's clear, I think so.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys. From the audience, somebody that would like to ask or ask a final question? No?
I see somebody typing.
Indeed. Something is coming in. What we will do, we have made a recording of today's meeting. So we will send out a link where people can watch it later onwards, and we will send out a question what people think of this new format for us, and what we can add, of course, as a next question, because we'd like to have a next topic special in 2 or 3 months time, so somewhere in March or April. And of course, we like to learn from people. What can we talk about? What can we present? It can be a technical question or more like this, business-wise. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
I can see Mr. Arjan is typing. Let's see if it's a question or maybe a thank you to all of us. It's thank you. Ah, well, perfect. Thank you, Arjan. Wonderful. Talk to you soon. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Tim, Mark, and Peter. It was great to do it like this, interview style. And well, at least I've learned a few things. I've made some remarks. So it was great doing it via this way. I'm looking forward to the next topic special, to have again a large audience and well, to see some nice people talking with passion about their business and their background. Thank you all.
Thanks, Tom.
I'll see you soon. Have a nice evening all.
Bye this evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nee, maar dat moet je ook doen.